He's muted.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
I think his hearing aids are turned off too. He should be able to hear even when he's muted. No. There, he's back. Michael, how are you? He doesn't seem to be able to hear. Can you hear us, Michael? Michael, can you hear us?
I sent him a chat to say he didn't seem to be hearing us.
I sent him a text, so all's in his court. Not much more we could do.
Okay, so the meeting is live streaming now. You can start at 6:30 or whenever you're ready to go.
Is anyone absent tonight? Is the mayor joining us?
The mayor is in the meeting, I believe. Yes.
Oh.
They just aren't up on the screen yet, so he may be away from his desk.
Okay, people are bouncing around. There we go. Now I see everybody.
Hello? Anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Because I can't hear anybody.
Oh, you don't hear me now.
Michael, you can't hear me? All right. Houston, we have a problem. He's chairing the meeting, isn't he?
No, that's me.
Oh, sorry, Cynthia.
That's okay. New routines there.
Time flies, eh, when you're having fun. And we don't need Michael if you're chairing.
Looks like he's trying to figure it out.
If somebody can text him or that, let him know that one, he needs to probably turn up his volume, but two, his speaker might even be unplugged off his computer. So just for him to check that as well.
And he might not have his hearing aids in.
Well, that is option 3.
Oh, and now he's gone. All right. I believe he's logged off and is probably logging back in.
Hello. I heard something there.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yep. That's good.
Excellent.
Sorry about that.
Well, I'm glad we got the bugs worked out. So are we ready to start? I believe that we are.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I will call the meeting to order for March 1st, 2021 at 6:32 p.m. now. And I just would like to make a note to everyone at this meeting that we have, since the agenda was published, we have received 10 written submissions in support of Milburn sidewalks. And those have been added to the agenda. And we have 2 residents who have registered to speak this evening. So I'm going to start with our roll call. If everyone could unmute, please. Councillor Parkinson.
Present.
Councillor Baxter.
I am here.
Excellent. Councillor Jansen.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Here.
Councillor Logan.
Present.
Mayor Martin.
Present.
Thank you. That is a full complement this evening. The next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. We have the near-term agenda, the long-term agenda, and tonight's agenda, Committee of the Whole for March 1st.
Excuse me, Chair. Sorry, just because I know it's your everybody's just sort of learning. We just haven't done our territory acknowledgement yet.
Oh, yes, of course. And we are meeting on the shared traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, to whom we are very grateful for all their sharing of knowledge and resources. Looking for an approval of the near-term and long-term agendas, as well as tonight's March 1st agenda.
I'll do that verbally, though. You got hands up all over the place.
Oh,
Remember, you got
okay.
to look at your little screen down below.
Well, up above. Okay, excellent. Sorry. That's the challenge. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, and I will take seconded by Councillor Baxter, as he is the first hand that I saw on my list there. Any in opposition to approval of the agendas? I see no hands, so we are good to go. Moving on then to adoption of the minutes from February 1st. That is moved by Councillor Kobayashi and seconded by Councillor Jansen. Is anyone have any additions or corrections to make? Seeing none, any opposed to the adoption of the minutes? I see none, so those will declare carried. Public participation. Amanda, would you like to invite our registered participants?
Okay, so currently we have only one who has entered the meeting. The last 3 digits of the phone number are 652. We ask that you unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, I am Carol Brown. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, that's excellent, Carol.
Good. All right. Carol Brown, and I live at 796 Qualta Crescent. May I begin?
Yes, please.
Oh, good. I promise not to go over 4 minutes. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this evening. I am here as one of the coordinators of Friends of Havenwood Park. We work with the city to help with the management, development, and education, meeting weekly to do such things as eradicate invasive plants, restore important habitats, and monitor the ecological health of the park. For the last 6 years, Friends of Havenwood Park have served as eyes in the park while doing their volunteer work. We have come before you today with deep concerns. We are not here representing any other community group or companies. We are acting solely in our role as park stewards. Friends of Havenwood Park are aware of the proposed rezoning of the land directly adjacent to the park on either side of Veterans Memorial Parkway. On the west, rezoning increases density from 21 detached homes to 4 6-story apartment buildings over 2 levels of parking. On the east, the proposed density will grow from 1 building of 30 units to 2 5-story apartment buildings with 100 units. After looking at the proposed development information, Friends of Havenwood Park have 3 major areas of concern. These concerns include, number 1, wetland degradation, number 2, loss of wind buffer zone, and number 3, major shading in the park ecosystem due to increased height. Both east and west lands involved in the rezoning application have running water that feeds into streams within Havenwood Park. It was determined in the OCP that if a hillside is to be developed, the site should minimize ecosystem disturbance and protect habitat areas. The Havenwood Management Plan recommends when land adjacent to the park is planned for development as a condition of subdivision, acquire additional parkland adjacent to or near the park that conserves sensitive natural features. Friends of Havenwood Park suggests that the applicant's wetland area to be donated to the city instead of the property's rocky outcrops above the wetland. These rocky outcrops are not nearly as significant to the protection of the park ecosystem as the wetlands would be. Friends of Havenwood Park would be pleased to make themselves available to offer tours to the end of Resolution Way to demonstrate how sensitive wetlands have been altered by previous development in the past. An additional area of concern is the potential loss of tree wind buffer zone along the park boundary. The rezoning application proposing an east side building with a drive-through restaurant and retail shops within meters of the park boundary and will cause havoc to the tree buffer zone. It also needs to be mentioned that the litter, noise, and loss of aesthetic view from this kind of retail development will likely cause even more degradation to the park and any wildlife that visits. Our third area of concern is that the ecosystem of Havenwood Park, immediately adjacent to the apartment buildings, will be placed into a shade of up to 8 stories and will alter the biodiversity in this particular area that Friends of Havenwood Park have worked hard to protect. We recommend leaving the density as initially zoned and accepted under the OCP. Our request is an appeal to the City of Colwood to consider the concerns of Friends of Havenwood Park. The approval of the rezoning application of the lands adjacent to Havenwood Park will affect aspects of the park permanently, and we trust that you will decide wisely in making decisions so crucial to Havenwood Park's future. Hopefully, you will look to the direction of our official community plan in determining where this kind of high density belongs in our city. We hope that you will also consider that this area is a unique hillside area, and how we treat it will affect the visual appearance of Colwood long into the future. We also need to listen to the information that the city staff is providing on the preparation for climate change. When we work with developers in building a truly sustainable and healthy community in Colwood, we all benefit. In the past, we did not always treat our land wisely. Now we know better, and we can build better. All it takes is the combined will to make the change. Our grandchildren will thank us. Thank you for allowing the Friends of Havenwood to speak to you this evening.
Thank you, Carol. Amanda, is our other guest arrived?
He has not arrived. I did try to call him, but was unable to get through. So I guess we'll have to move forward.
Okay, thank you. We will move on. Amanda, feel free to interrupt me if we are able to go back to them. I know it's so frustrating when you're trying to dial into a Zoom meeting and things aren't working. So if he does or they do show up, please let me know. Thank you. That concludes the number 4, and we are moving on to number 5. We have a presentation from Grant Brown, the Chief Administrative Officer, and Ben Curry, the Manager of Finance and Administration from West Shore Parks and Recreation, on the 2021 budget. Grant and Ben, would you like to start your presentation?
Yes, absolutely. This is Ben here, and I'll just get it going, and then Grant's going to do the introduction, but I'll control and share my screen here for the PowerPoint.
Oh, just before you start screen sharing, Grant, can you try speaking again? I saw your lips moving, but no sound. Still no sound.
Are you able to hear me now?
There we go.
Okay, great. That always stresses me out. I do the test before and it all works, and then I wonder if it's going to.
I hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll just wait for. I'd like to. While Ben's pulling that up, I'd just like to thank both Mayor and Council for allowing us the opportunity to present a review of our 2020 operations as well as our 2021 budget requisition request.
Thank you.
Can everybody see that okay?
No, I don't see anything yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. Just a second here.
Oh, I think it's coming. There we go. Okay, great. Thanks, Ben.
You can see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so as I mentioned, thank you for having us here. So Ben, if you want to flip to the next slide. So for today's presentation, I'll start off with highlighting our organization's work throughout a very challenging year for all of us in 2020 and what is on the horizon for 2021. Then I will pass the presentation over to our Manager of Finance Administration, Ben Curry, to cover the 2021 budget and requisition request. Ben joined our team recently, just this last September, from Seashell. On to the next slide. Okay. 2020 was a very challenging year for all of us. We started very strong with the first 2.5 months performing much better than in recent years. Fitness and aquatics admissions had fully bounced back to pre-West Shore Y attendance, and swimming and skating lessons were near capacity. Then in mid-March, everything hit and recreation facilities around the province began closing as the first wave of COVID-19 spread and public health and safety concerns grew. Our staff went into a cycle of planning for the unpredictable, anticipating what we might be able to be permitted to offer. It was often a 2 steps forward to 1 step back scenarios. We're trying to figure out what we may and may not be able to offer under COVID restrictions. We worked very closely with our regional and provincial partners to develop operating protocols. The close ties to the Greater Victoria region that we've always established for years and the recreation field made for a very collaborative effort. So we very much developed all of our reopening plans and what kind of facilities we would offer and when we'd open our playgrounds as an example, and went on work conjunction with each other, knowing that any decision each one of us made would have quite the effect on the others, as the public, even though we're different municipalities, different regions, the public still sees recreation as whole. And once you start offering in one place, then you've got to look at what you're offering everywhere else. Our gradual reopening began with the golf course in May, which saw rounds played last year, not since 2004. So it was absolutely amazing. We did nearly over 100,000 more in dollars as far as rounds went for the golf course this year, as golf really was the perfect exercise for an activity for COVID restrictions. It's outdoors, groups of no more than 4, easily be able to keep people spread out. Next, the weight room opened in June, of which we were the first in the region. We shared our success with our regional public and private counterparts to aid them in their reopening. We actually, before we started, we had Island Health inspectors come and see our facility, go through our processes that we had developed, and we had glowing remarks from them as how we were going to operate. We've since that point had them back through. They still indicate that they wish everyone else was operating with the same kind of controls and measures we've put in place to ensure safe exercise routines and return for the public. The majority of the pre-registered sessions in fitness filled quickly and remain so now. It's still a high demand when we can normally have upwards of 70, 80 people in the weight room, and right now we can only have 42. It fills very quickly in a lot of those key times. In the summer, we followed with the opening of the Q Center and summer camps. With the summer camps, we weren't able to run as many camps or have as many children in those programs as we used to be able to. However, what we did offer ran at 96% full for the summer. So there's still definitely that very high demand for what would be childcare and activity for their children over the summer. And we were able to offer and meet a lot of those needs. By the fall, we were offering all that was possible under the provincial restrictions. The unfortunate exception was our pool facility, which remained closed due to financial challenges we were facing. I'm very proud of the efforts of our staff in 2020 as we were looking to be on budget. We're just in the process, Ben is right now, of year end, and we're looking to be very close on budget, which is definitely an exception in our field last year compared to the region and our counterparts around the province. This involved a lot of outside the box thinking and flexibility from our staff as we changed their portfolios and reassigned those in departments that weren't able to operate. So, for example, we had our pool programmer who just came to us before this happened was working in the weight room for 9 months. We had our food and beverage supervisor was most recently working as our accounts receivables clerk. We had a lot of flexibility and openness from the staff to work with us to keep our goal was to keep them employed, but as well as by being able to move them into positions that were open for reasons other than COVID to save some of those costs. We also started 2 large projects in 2020, both funded via provincial and federal grants, as well as the Union of BC Municipalities. And in the case of the JDF Arena floor replacement, some reserve funds from yourselves as owners that we've been holding on to since I believe it was 2012. And so those projects happened. And as you may recall, the childcare project grant application was actually a partnership between West Shore and yourselves as Colwood to receive some of those funds through UBCM to be able to do that project that we've started. Both the JDF floor replacement and the childcare spaces development broke ground in the fall and are on schedule to be completed this June. ICE will be in place for the summer ICE programs, and the childcare space will be available for summer camps. And so both of them are slated to be completed early to mid-June. Last fall, the board of directors and staff worked with the consultant to develop a new strategic plan moving in as the current one ended last year for 2021 to 2025. The new 5-year plan continues to focus on 4 areas: building strong relationships, sustainable operations, excellence in service delivery, and innovation and leadership. The goal for West Shore is to continue to be a leader in public recreation that serves the West Shore community well and is seen by each of you as our owners as your Parks and Recreation Department. Next slide. Yeah, and so we'll look at a bit of the human factor that happened through 2020. Throughout 2020, we were reducing services and closing facilities. We remain committed to keep all of our regular staff employed. We did this in conjunction with our staff's flexibility as we chose not to post positions that as they became vacant due to maternity leaves or staff gaining employment elsewhere. So we had, as some examples, we had maintenance staff who just happened before COVID actually hit us, receive positions elsewhere. So we had some of those and we just didn't post them, kept them vacant for the year. We had some maternity leaves that we were able to slot other people into or just change portfolios of people to pick up some of those aspects. So as mentioned, we asked staff to take on more new duties, replace those that had fallen away with reduced services and volume. As mentioned, as an example, we kept 7 maintenance positions open through the year. So it's not a long-term great plan, but it was a way we were able to keep our costs down to continue to operate. Long-term, of course, as you can imagine, that'll have some bad effect. Some of those pieces, though, we brought some of those positions back as the pool opened, some of those restart funds, and someone using those to get those positions back and going. Sadly, we did, however, have to lay off roughly 200 auxiliary staff going into the 3-month closure that began mid-March. The board at the time did approve a one-time payment to each of the laid off staff, equaling an average of 2 weeks' pay that they normally would receive. And this was to help them transition to the government subsidy programs that were in the initial stages of being developed. So it was definitely recreation functions with auxiliary staff. We have 300 staff, 200 of those are auxiliary, more than 200 are auxiliary. And to have a lot of them not be employed and not see them for 3 months, it was quite nice to see. Our weight room staff was one of our first ones, and I made sure to point out to him he was our first returnee come June 1st. We were bringing back some of the auxiliary staff. So the charts before you there, they compare staffing levels just to give you a picture where we're at. So in the top of the top chart is where we were last January 1st, 2020, before COVID hit. And you can see we had 263 staff employed at that time. We peak in the summer when you're around summer camps and push upwards of 300. The chart below was where we were at this year, and so at 119. So you can see the big drop in staff. A lot of those, the majority of that is in programs where it was 170 last year to 67 this year. And that's just as a result of us not being able to offer either as many programs or as many people in a given program. And so some of that staffing was quite a drop of 144 active staff one year to the next. As we reopen the pool, and many programs are once again running, and we've hired back 75 auxiliary staff so far from last year. We have lost 55 staff between March 2020 and now who have found work elsewhere, decided to go back to school. So there's a natural with auxiliary, and a lot of them are younger staff that tend to move on. So we have lost some of those. That's a bit bigger number than we would normally see, but not a horrendous one. But we are happy to see that we're slowly bringing them back. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kobayashi, I see a question.
Can there is a question from Councillor Kobayashi.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, Grant. What's the FNB stand for?
That's food and beverage. Sorry. We'll go on to the next slide. So now we're going to move into what we're seeing in 2021. So on the program side, we're very grateful for all of our owner council's decisions to grant us COVID-19 restart funds to get that pool up and going. It's been incredibly successful. The feedback has been great from the public. It's as full all the way as you can possibly choose right now. So far, we've the first grouping of swim lessons for youth went in. It was full all the way to the end of February in 90 minutes. The second set of lessons have just gone through, filled again with under a day. We're putting 250 to 300 visits a day right now. To put in perspective, that could be one swim previously. But right now, based on what we have up to 7 sessions a day that we're putting people through, as well as swimming lessons and around there. And we can have upwards of 50 people per time. They're looking at trying to expand some of those lessons. And because of the space, we're actually allowed a little bit more. They're just, staff are working on trying to understand all the logistics. So for example, we might be allowed to have more people in the pool because we fall under more of the grocery store rules and so on. However, they can't be in one of the pools. And so the challenge is we could say let 50 people in there, but all 50 go into the leisure pool, and there's too many people in the leisure pool. So the guards are still working on some of those processes, but they've been very successful, and it's been very well received. Spring break camps registrations were very, very strong. Again, not able to offer quite as much as we would have in previous years, but there's still a high demand, as we all know, for childcare, and that's a big function of the camps. So that's been really good. Fitness studio use remains really high based on the number that we can actually have in there. Most of those sessions are full, as I mentioned. As well as the Q Center, only having the one ice sheet because work's going on the other one, is pretty much fully booked. The exception of that right now is adult sport rentals, which aren't allowed under the current restrictions. We're hoping those will start to be eased off shortly at some point, but we'll see. We're not expecting that to happen probably till after Easter and spring break. However, even with those now not being able to happen, a lot of the other youth groups and so on are picking some of those ice times up. So the Q Center is actually seeing ice usage like it's never seen before because we only have the one sheet instead of 2. We also completed the relocation of the Pottery studio that was in the basement of the Q Center to the Centennial Center. That's been in planning for quite some time. That was completed this past January. The studio looks absolutely amazing. We got a lot of custom built cabinetry and metalwork done in there for quite the sophisticated filtering systems for the water and whatnot to make sure that stays out of the water system. It was quite a project and looks just fantastic. And it's just helping us further develop the Centennial Center as our arts and culture hub for the West Shore. And as mentioned, both the childcare and JDF arena replacement projects are well underway. As a note with that childcare project, registration has begun for that because that project increased the number of spots we have in our preschool programs, as well as excuse me, after school care program, and then created a new daycare. Our interest in all of those spaces that we created is far exceeded what we actually have space. So it's a great problem to have. The demand is there as we expected it would be. They're just in the process right now of getting that information. They can't fully register the children into the daycare quite yet, as they have to wait until they get their full licensing, which will happen in conjunction with the completion of the space. But so far for the daycare, as an example, there's 24 spots and we have 32 families that are interested, plus another 16 in infant care, which wasn't our plan, but they're investigating that part as well. And the challenge with infant care is the ratios are far different. And so unable to make that happen, we have to charge more, get more staffing and so on, but they're looking at those pieces. Oh, I see a question.
We have another question from Mayor Martin.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Grant, just because you mentioned that we only have the one ice sheet with the Q Center, and that Mayor Young has announced that Eagle Ridge is going to be using for vaccination, so we have lost that sheet of ice as well as the upper sheet of ice. And I've also seen reports that the lacrosse, the Western Lacrosse League, is going to be happening this year. Does that mean that we're still taking our ice out for the lacrosse, or were we planning on keeping the ice in to support all the people, all the users who would want to be using it late spring?
Thank you, through the chair. We are keeping the ice in longer than usual, but we're still removing the ice at the end of April. So we're keeping it for 3 weeks longer than we normally would. And that was in conjunction with discussions with the Grizzlies as an example, and some of the other ice groups that were wanting to keep things going. But we are pulling the ice because the challenge would be if we kept it in longer and not having the other dry floor surfaces, we would just be sacrificing one sports group for the other. And so we are we have been in contact with the minor lacrosse and the other dry floor users. May 5th or 6th, it will be when the dry floor will kick off into the queue. We've also got the indoor sports complex, which is the area we turn the curling rink into, which is useful for lacrosse and other dry floor activities for the younger ages. So we'll put them in there. We're also going to, we're offering up to get the outdoor lacrosse box we have going, as well as the Belmont box as well. There's some work potentially needed there, which we're going to get our staff on, as far as they're talking about lights and clocks and so on to have games, but it's certainly a practice facility. So we're working with there. And we've also been trying to reach out to other areas in the region as far as we try to get a hold of you, Vic, just to see if we can help them out on gaining some of those spaces as well.
Great.
Okay, and then into the last slide for me there, Ben, thanks. On the maintenance side, so throughout 2020, our maintenance crews adapted to new increased cleaning regimes and schedules, as many of you can imagine, ensuring that our facilities remain safe and looking great. One of the things we did do during that 3-month closure, the regular staff that were still employed as far as the maintenance crew refinished floors, they painted everything. That I've never, in my 3.5 years now, I've never seen it look so great. Their goal was, by the time we get the public back in here, we want it to look amazing, so they know that we've been getting it ready, and it was a very good job that was done. We also finished the installation of the air handling unit for the pool. We've already received quite a few compliments on one of the big issues of our pool is humidity, both from it created maintenance concerns because it just wore down equipment and machinery faster, as well as just from a comfort level. And so this was a designed quite an expensive piece of equipment that's gone in, which a big part of it is the dehumidification, and it's quite an impressive change, quite noticeable when you go into the facility. With this too, we also got a heat recovery unit as part of it. And this is going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 125 tons per year, and equates to roughly a $19,000 savings in natural gas expenses to operate and heat the pool and the facility there. The captured exhaust heat will be used to heat the leisure pool and going there. So that's been a big change for us. They also converted 2 propane Zambonis were converted to electric, just to reduce some of the footprint there. And the JDF Arena floor project also includes a heat recovery unit that will use the captured exhaust heat from the ice plant to heat the administration offices. So that's an aspect that I want to call it modern, but all new arenas always have that now. They have an energy recovery loop to grab. There's a lot of waste heat that comes off the ice plant, and they use that to heat other aspects. All of us who have older arenas now, as we're renewing them, we bring that aspect into it. So we start to add that that piece of infrastructure, which cuts down on energy consumption and greenhouse gas. There's a lot of that waste heat can be used elsewhere. And in closing, just mentioning that the reducing energy consumption and our carbon footprint has always been a high priority for our operations crews when the opportunities arise. The work that I just mentioned now, as well as for the previous years, as an example, saves us just purely on hydro alone $130,000 annually, based on if you use today's rates compared to what we used to use in electricity in 2014. So we look at that, that's a great opportunity cost for saving. We can use those funds to do other things for the community instead, and or a combination of course, asking for less requisition requests to be able to operate. So that's a great win, and it's been something that West Shore has been looking at for years, as far as every time we do a major equipment upgrade.
Great. Councillor Johnson has a question as well.
Sure.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can you tell us, Grant, how's it worked out sort of post curling with the transition for the curling rink to dry floor, how all that has unfolded? And I mean, absent the COVID issues, has it been successful, or are we missing the mark, or what?
No, it's been very successful. It was just ramping up, unfortunately, when COVID hit, so we never got to see it at the beginning. But now every evening, after school care is an example, because they need a designated play area, so they're in there on the fields. We've got youth ball is in there. We have some youth volleyball, youth basketball. Because half of it's turf and half of it are sports courts, we can do quite a few different things. The demand's really high, and I see it's just going to continue to grow. As mentioned, it stalled at the beginning because COVID hit and everything kind of stalled. And then we went into summer, which is not when we expect to see peak use of it anyways, because that's when they'll be outside. But there's definitely a high demand, as well as some pickleball courts on the sport court side, and the turf coming in out. And interesting enough, right now, actually, we're actually renting it at the moment for a movie shoot. Is actually used it, like they call it a black room, I think. They're built on the one side, and they're doing a bit of a movie shoot in there. So it's been quite multi-purpose.
And we have another question from Councillor Kobayashi. If you were satisfied, Councillor Johnson?
Sorry, yes, I was muted there, but I said thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Kobayashi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just a quick question, and maybe the mayor can answer this question if you can't. I'm just trying to understand, whenever the word daycare is used to me, and I understand that we got a UBCM grant, and we also funded it from the city of Colwood. Can you just explain this to me, just so that I'm really clear? Where's the differentiation of what the province is responsible for when it comes to daycare, and what we're responsible when it comes to daycare at the municipal level? Because, clearly looking at the policies of the provincial government, they say that's their waters. So can someone just explain this quickly to me, and why the provincial government isn't jumping in and funding this type of endeavor?
For myself, there, I'm through the chair. I don't know where sort of the grounds would be between the two. I'm familiar with where I was previously. We ran daycare as well as a municipal recreation department. It does become a fairly affordable option for the public through us, as far as there's some subsidization there. We do, through the process, because it's licensed, the government funds on subsidy aspects, where it actually reduces the amount that the parents are paying to be in the program, but they're not funding it completely. It's kind of a partnership between, and depending on the income levels of the parents, depends on how much subsidy they get. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, sort of, but I guess it still comes down to, so we are subsidizing it, and the parents are somewhat, I think this is your response, but I'm just trying to draw the line. I don't understand like what our responsibility is, because I just want to understand this, and what the province's responsibility is. Like, does anyone know? Can anyone tell me?
I could offer you a little, just because I read the grant applications. The grants were for facilities, but Mayor Martin, do you have a better answer?
Oh, no, not at all. The only thing I was going to say was that when Grant said that we were part of the participation, it was that we needed to put down a municipality when we applied for that federal grant, and so that federal grant we put up our name as the municipality to do it. But it's from a subsidy standpoint, it would be just like any other recreational, like Oak Bay Rec or anybody else, that we're just providing it as a service to our residents.
Okay, thank you.
Grant, and oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, Councillor Kobayashi. Grant, if I'm wrong on that, please correct me.
Through the chair. Yes, thank you. Actually, that was perfect. Yeah, that's exactly it. So the partnership was more in name, as far as, because they need both the grants that have gone towards it, one from the province and one from UBCM, both needed to come through municipality. The actual funding for it is fully covered through UBCM. There isn't a portion that's separate, say, from Colwood.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much.
So that's it for my side. So I'm going to pass it over to Ben to cover the financials.
Okay, thank you, Grant. You're a hard person to follow. That was very informative. So just to provide a bit of background on myself, my name is Ben Curry, and I came to West Shore Parks and Recreation just this last September. I have worked almost 15 years in municipal finance throughout my career. I've worked for the municipality of the city of Kelowna for 5 years, and I spent 5 years with the city of Merritt, and just about 5 years with the district of Sechelt on the Sunshine Coast. So that brings me to follow my passion in recreation, and the opportunity with West Shore came up, and we moved our family during the COVID pandemic, which has had its challenges. So I'll jump right in to the presentation, just strictly for the budget now. I'm going to just do a summary of the 2021 budget, then a summary of our 2021 capital, and then the impact to the municipality for Colwood. And then any questions that you may have, just interrupt me, and I'm happy to pause and answer as we go along. So how we got here with the budget that's presented today. The process first started back in July 2020. Staff reviewed the results from the June and revenue and expense reports, and they began planning for the following year. We first presented the budget to our board for review and deliberation on October 8th, 2020. This request in October started at a 4.49% increase to the overall requisition. The board requested at that meeting, the board requested that staff look to further decrease and reduce the increase due to the circumstances under COVID. So we didn't have the support for the 4.49% increase at that time, which is understandable. And in November, we returned to the board meeting with an updated budget and an overall increase of 2.5% to our requisition. And that's overall to the municipalities. Both budgets presented in October and November considered operations would return relatively normal, and thus revenue would return to almost normal in July 2021. So we had prepared budgets thinking optimistically that things may return to normal if vaccines had kind of been pushed out throughout the winter. Through discussion and direction from the board at our November Finance Committee meeting, we decided that it was best to produce a budget which considered reduced services and options for the complete year, considering under the COVID regulations that were and reduced services that we're currently under. So in the West Shore Parks and Rec Society's requisition request today is a 3.9% increase at or a $197,000 increase to over the 2020 approved requisition. This budget today considers a full year of continued operations with reduced services for COVID-19. So due to COVID-19, sorry. So this budget today that you're seeing is with considerations of the ongoing concern of how we're operating right now. So we've reduced, as I'll show you as we go along, we've reduced the expectation of revenue, and alongside we've reduced the expenses. Okay, I'm gonna move through this here. So this slide here shows you the overall requisition increase over our 5-year financial plan. So you see we start at 3.9% for 2021, and then 4% for 2022, with gradual increases of 2.5% covering a modest CPI and a little bit of a additional transfer to capital included 2023 to 2025. So the 4% increase in 2022 brings our transfer to capital back up to normal levels. We've reduced our transfer to capital for 2021 by 110,000 to make the budget work with the increase as it's presented today. This here is the total revenues. I just wanted to point out the bottom line here, which is the reduction of 47.6% decrease in our revenue compared to the prior year. So you can see here our revenue levels in 2020 were 6.3 million. And now our revenue projections for 2021 are reduced to 3.3 million. You see this as the 5-year plan continues, that we're just forecasting modest increases, so we're not expecting things to return to normal. And even our 2025 year, we're just anticipating things to finally get closer to what they would have been expected in 2020. So this is just a gradual build back to where we used to be back in the 2019 levels. So you see we've 47% decrease in expected revenue levels due to COVID. The next slide here shows the operational expenses. I just want to point out here the 2020 operational expenses of 11.4 million and compared to the reduced operational expenses of 2.8 million in 2021 in the budget presented today. So that's a 24.8% decrease. And along the same lines as our revenue, we're expecting a slow build back to where we were to get back to the 2019 levels. So you'll see the 8.5 slowly growing and expenses going back to more moderate levels in 2025. With at the same time, you'll see we're with the increases presented today in the 5-year plan, we're trying to build up our transfer to capital just to assist us with opportunities for funds for new initiatives and then also for major capital maintenance. So my next slide here is the 2021 capital included with our budget.
Can I just get you to pause for another question from Councillor Kobayashi?
Sure.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a really quick question. It's maybe a simple or maybe a difficult one, but of your operating costs right now, your operating expenses, if you could just rough order of magnitude this for me right now, have you ever broken this down to what is actually fixed and what is variable?
I'm going to defer that question over to Grant to see if he has done this. I haven't myself, being new in less than 6 months, but maybe Grant has seen it in that form.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah. We haven't broken it down completely, and I don't have it at hand, but roughly as an example, our wage aspect is 70% of our expense.
Okay.
So we've got roughly probably 6 million in a normal year, we're pushing 8 million in expenses is just wages. And a good chunk of those wages is just our operating cost. And then once you throw into utilities and so on, which is another 300,000 to 400,000 on top of that, we're probably of our normal expense budget of 11.4, we're probably pushing 8 million of that is relatively fixed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, just jumping back to the capital slide here. Some of the regular, we replace 2 treadmills each year. So this is an annual amount of 20,000. There's a couple of major site maintenance items here. Pool main filter, diving boards, generator. The major projects for 2021, which I'll highlight, and Grant has spoken, are the JDF Child Care Center and also the arena floor replacement, both major capital events that are taking quite a bit of staff time, resources, and even occupying a lot of space on the site at the moment. The other one we have in is the skate park, which is something where we have 2 different grant applications that are in right now at the moment. And then recreation software as well. So we're changing over our software, which we schedule all our registration for programs and do 90% of our transactions through. So this is a big project which we're moving over to a company called Intelligence, and which should create a lot of efficiencies and some better ease for the public use. And another one that we're excited about here is the website for 50,000. So we are updating and upgrading our website, which is something that has been in need for quite a few years now. The maintenance for vehicle replacement here are just this replacement vehicles of existing infrastructure, existing equipment. The capital funding here, so this just coincides with the 5.5 million here. This is how we're paying for our capital in 2021. We have a fitness equipment reserve, which funds the treadmills. And then the 2 major capital projects are funded by grants. That's the childcare and the UBCM portion, the federal infrastructure improvement grant. And then the last one here for the $1,075,000 is the skateboard park. And then the remainder of our capital is funded from our equipment and maintenance reserve for $683,000 this year. The projected reserve balances for 2021, here's the 2020 projected reserve balances where we should land at 250,000 for the equipment replacement reserve, the maintenance repair reserve at 1.5 million, and the government grants, which is the grants we receive for the 2 major capital projects, which we transfer into a reserve. Then it's funding the projects completely through 2021. So you see where we land after the 683,000 transfer from reserve for the major, I'm just going to go back a slide here, just to show you the 683 here for the equipment and maintenance reserve, and where that comes out to land the reserve at the 1.1 million projected balance in at the end of 2021. So just seeing our reserve continuity schedule here, this shows you, I'll just skip over to the right side here for the general capital reserve with the opening balance of 1.5 million. And you see where the contributions, we're trying to grow these contributions just to keep the balance going with our capital plan. Capital plan at the moment just includes just major repairs and maintenance. So this doesn't include any new initiatives or what we'd like to consider the fun projects. So we are hoping to grow this contribution to the general capital reserve, so we have more options to do more initiatives in the future. You'll see where this balance gets quite low in 2024, and in 2025 at the current contribution levels, we have 150,000 at the end. So we don't have a lot of extra funds available for new initiatives. So if we were to apply for any further grants, we'll have to reach out to the municipalities and the owners for support for any new initiatives. The equipment replacement reserve is a little more healthy, but it does have its ongoing expenses, which are our fitness equipment replacement, and also vehicles are coming out of here. But a healthier balance at the end of 2025 compared to the general capital reserve.
And there's another question for you from Councillor Kobayashi.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to be a pain here. I'm just trying to understand this. This is really good, and just a general curiosity question. The contributions for your reserve fund, where does that come from? The majority of it come from? Is it when you get surpluses every year and you put it into your reserve, or does it come from the municipalities or where does it come from?
That's a great question. I'm just going to go to a slide which you can see how the transfers are set up in our financial plan. So if you see these transfers here, the transfer to fitness equipment, the sign reserve, the transfer to IT reserve, these are built in as expenses in the budget. So they're here already. So the transfer to general capital, the 347 down here is what it has been for the last number of years. And you see it, we've reduced it to keep our request this year below the 4% to drop our number, so we could essentially make the budget work. And then you see us build it back up to 347,000 and 413, and slow increments, slower than we'd like, but it's at least a small increase helps. So this is where the transfers to reserve are. So it's not as though it's a budgeted surplus. It's a budgeted expense. So the electronic sign reserve, these are all spoken for. The bus as well. So this would be a bus replacement when the lifespan of the bus expires. And the transfer to general capital coincides slightly with major repair and maintenance, but doesn't quite make the gap to actually fund the full depreciation of maintenance equipment. I think it's the struggle that most municipalities and societies like us have.
Oh, that's a great answer. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's an unusual way of doing it, but I understand it. And so thank you. That's a great answer.
You're welcome. Just gonna find my spot here. Okay, the 2021 requisition request here. So this is the operating amount that we're asking for, which is in comparison to the 2020 budget in comparison to 2021, and just showing you how the increases are applied. This capital here, the 347, the difference here from 2020 to 2021, why it doesn't look like it's been reduced, is this 392 includes those other transfers which I just showed you, and in the prior budget, those transfers, the transfer to the bus, the transfer to the sign reserve, are included in the line above. So it doesn't quite, it looks like we've increased the transfer to capital, but this is actually just the transfer to general capital. For next year, I'll try to show that a little cleaner because it'll be in the right line for a good comparison. So here's your increase here, is a 3.46% for your requisition amount for Colwood compared to the prior year. So that's an increase of $37,480. So this computes to a per capita increase to the Colwood residents or to Colwood of $2.04 per capita. You can see how this compares to Highlands and Metchosin, who both see a reduction. And this is not based on population, but it's based on total assessed value. So their Langford is growing a much faster rate and higher increase to their improvements in the assessment values, which means that they are just becoming the bigger municipality improvement wise for BC assessment. So they're actually taking a bigger piece of the pie, are paying for a bigger piece of the pie. So just showing this in another way here, this slide here, Colwood at the top, is I take your property tax values from 2020 and then apply the what would be the increase here for the 37,000 from the prior slide, and it would equal to a 0.25% increase to your property taxation over your 2020 property tax. So if we're just comparing, you were going with a zero budget this year and you needed to fund the property, this increase to the WSPR, you would be looking at a 0.25% increase to fund it. So that's the per capita amount of $2.04. So included in the budget, we do include the consideration for the fees and charges. We do a complete review and adjustment of our fees and charges where possible in comparison to the market rates usage and also for cost recovery. This we have admissions. We've done a slight increase to adult admissions, seniors, and families, but no increases to youth rates. We felt that we wanted to pause on increasing or moving any of the youth rates, and we still needed to recover a little bit extra in the programming side for adult, senior, and family to make this budget work. It's approximately a 10% average increase to small room rental rates. That's for room rental, like facility rental bookings on site, and approximately 2.5% average increase to the arena rental rates, and a 6% average increase to the outdoor facilities. So we felt that overall these were fair, reasonable increases that that worked within the market, and we don't feel as though they would we would decrease usership, and there was room in each of these fees for the increase. So these fees are applied, and they're through the revenue lines that are in the budget presented today. And that concludes my presentation today. I'm just finishing here with a picture of the artist rendering of the childcare facility, and this is for the outdoor play area, which will be in the front side of our building. So this will be replacing the parking that's currently there. So you should see this by the end of summer. You should see the kids playing out here. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. I'll just give a last opportunity. Were there any questions that people were holding till the end? Seeing none, I thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, our next item on our agenda is the Milburn Sidewalk Necessity, and Brad Windsor. Brad, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you just fine.
Perfect. So I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Yep.
Perfect. First of all, I just want to say good evening to Mayor and Council. And I just want to start off by saying we appreciate the opportunity to present our case for sidewalks on Milburn Drive via PowerPoint. And I know this isn't the usual circumstance for a meeting of the whole, so we just want to say we appreciate it. Thank you very much. The residents of Milburn Drive have been, as you know, frustrated for several years now with the lack of action from the city in terms of upgrading for safety on our street. We appreciate that we have the opportunity at this meeting to make our case and to be included in the transportation master plan that will occur over the next 10 years in Colwood. I would be remiss not to say that we're a little bit frustrated that we weren't included initially, and that we have to now present a case to be included despite everything that we'll go through in the coming slides. I would first like to speak to general points on why we should include Milburn Drive. What makes Milburn unique is that it's one of two roads that leads to the Esquimalt Lagoon in Colwood. This is a destination park and probably the highest traffic destination park in Colwood. The road is steep in parts and also bends. It's used as a heavy pedestrian and cycling route to the lagoon, and it's used by the number 54 bus to go to the lagoon. This is a collector and commuter route, despite what it's being, I would say the paradigm is that it's a side street. It absolutely is not, and we'll illustrate why shortly. It is a collector route, just as Lagoon is and several of the roads that are on the plan. We have heard in the past that council has decisions to make on which sidewalks to include in this plan, and that there's tough decisions. We have to take into consideration if any of the other roads on this plan meet all of those factors that you see here. The only one that would come close is the other 400 meters of Lagoon Drive that aren't completed yet on the report. So I just want to start off by saying that these are just the general salient points about what we're talking about here. I want to just address this elephant in the room that everyone's aware of, and that is the spectacular accident that just happened recently on Milburn Drive. This accident was due to a car traveling in excessive speed. There's no disputing that. But that driver didn't lose control and fly off the road. That driver drove straight, which means that he left the road because it bends. He couldn't see that there was a turn, And we have no doubt that a big white curve and sidewalk would have alerted him to that fact. He just saw darkness and kept traveling. Some of the responses to this incident was that he was simply speeding so much that it didn't have anything to do with the road, but the argument doesn't hold up, as that same head wall was crashed into twice now in 2 years. This is now being replaced as we speak by the city. No one has died in this accident, and I think that we can all agree that it's fortunate and lucky that they didn't. This happened at 8 o'clock at night, and I know on the video it looks like it was midnight, but it was 8 o'clock at night. This is a point in time where people around here are walking their dogs, going for strolls after dinner and such, and it's a very popular destination to the beach. It's an understatement to say that we were fortunate that no one was there or hurt. Because of the publicity this accident received, being on loop on Global BC for an entire weekend and played on several different media outlets, it might be assumed that this request tonight is because of the accident. We have been requesting sidewalks for several years, and this accident is just the latest incident in a string of incidents that we need to have addressed. I'd like to speak also quickly about the master plan and its use. The common sense nature of Milburn Drive is illustrated here. What you see is a red box that illustrates the kind of slow area of morning traffic around Sangster Elementary in the school zone. Royal Bay is an exciting development that offers so much possibilities for Colwood. I think there's a lot of excitement about its potential and its addition to the city. We do see the city heavily support this development. However, we do not see the city heavily supporting the surrounding infrastructure. It's become clear that Royal Bay uses Milburn Drive as a commuting route. Many will avoid the Sangster Elementary School zone illustrated here, as there's multiple drop-offs and it takes a while to get to that bottleneck. The easiest way around that bottleneck is to divert on Hatley Drive and come down on Milburn out to Ocean Boulevard. As you can see, there's no real easy way for them to get over here to Lagoon. So unless they want to go out of their way and through that Sangster Elementary zone in the morning, they have to go further up and then further over and then down. We did see a reduction in volume on Milburn Drive when Ocean Boulevard was closed over the summer, but with council voting to reopen Ocean Boulevard for commuting purposes, we have to recognize that we have to take that route and we have to make it as safe as possible now. It should be noted that many of the comments on social media have said that people would take this route despite it even being slower. In other words, people don't want to adhere to the master plan simply because that's just the plan. They want to take the easiest, most common sense route to get to work and back. The city suggested putting a no right-hand turn off of Hatley onto Milburn Drive in the past and had also considered closing Hatley Drive. There's even talk about making Milburn a one-way street from Ocean to Lagoon. And really, from our point of view, this all just illustrates the fact that Milburn is in fact a huge concern. And we're just looking for cheaper ways to deal with it rather than simply engineer for safety. Additionally, we run the risk of punishing all the local residents who live on Perimeter Park area by making them drive extra far just to get to the ocean that they moved in beside. All because we just haven't really supported Milburn Drive being a safer road. We were disappointed to learn that in the report, it took into account none of the actual characteristics of the road, even though we've been hoping that it would, in terms of its pitch, its bendiness, and so on, lighting and so forth. And that it took into account only the width of the pathways and if actual accidents had occurred with pedestrians. And for us, it just seems like common sense to want to avoid pedestrian collisions before they happen. I'm not sure why we wait until someone gets hurt or possibly killed, if that's not too dramatic, before we say, oh yes, this road has been complained about for several years and we needed a sidewalk and could have done something about it. On this slide, I just want to really quickly show what it looks like for people who don't live in Royal Bay. Pedestrians who live in the surrounding community want to go to walk to the beach are probably not going to go all the way over to Lagoon to take a sidewalk when the closest is actually Milburn Drive. Secondly, the designated parking lot for the beach area is actually at the base of Milburn Drive and not Lagoon. This plan would ask people to go out of their way, drive onto Lagoon before they go down to Milburn Drive. It's simply not what people do. There's a lot of people who park along the beach, and in fact, the majority. And they will absolutely take Lagoon because that makes more sense. We have to understand how Milburn is used. We have to shift our paradigm about how Milburn is used and understand that it truly is a commuting collector now. And that's just the change that we have to understand.
Okay, Mr. Windsor, I'm just going to ask you to kind of pull it together. We have quite a bit on our agenda tonight, and I do really appreciate your very clear presentation. That's great. Just we need to move it along.
Sure. So really quickly, this is an analogy. We basically are saying that Milburn Drive is a safety issue. And if you were to build a deck and the city inspector came along, he would say, hey, you know what? You need to put a railing on that deck. It's not going to say, hey, put less people on the deck or put a sign on the deck. We need to make it safer. And this is basically what this analogy does. And then if we were to compare it against a less safe deck that also needed a rail, that is Milburn Drive. We are a higher deck. We need the rail. We need it right now. And that's basically what this analogy is. Initially, when this all started, this was a near-miss incident with my daughter, a 6-year-old who almost got run over on Milburn Drive. We garnered 253 people in 3 days to sign a petition that we barely promoted. And there's only 50 homes on Milburn Drive, so we can do the math. This is a few things what they're saying, and I would hope that everyone has taken some time to go through and read this a little bit, just to determine what we need to do. And you know, hearing what people have to say, and I believe you said there's 10 pages of people who supported sidewalks on Milburn who have also contributed to the meeting of the whole tonight. In terms of price, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to move it along as fast as I can for you. I appreciate the heads up. The previous estimate by the mayor on Milburn Drive at north of 2 million on Check News. The good news is in the report, it's only estimated at 1.2 million. We have to say that over the course of the 10 years, with the amount of property tax we take in, we're talking about $150 million over 10 years. If every sidewalk on this proposal is included, it's 4% of that over the course of 10 years. And that's what the first thing anyone in Colwood screams about in terms of walkability or anything is sidewalks. Sidewalks. This is a no-brainer for the council, in my opinion. Milburn and the media, we have to point this out because it's not just me and it's not just a couple of people in the area. This has been a going concern. No other road in the plan right now has this amount of media attention on it. And this goes back to 2015, but we have a 2017 editorial tragedy waiting to happen. It goes on, and we ask that you take a look at the links. We were asked not to show the videos in here, and that's fine. But one of the videos shows a bus going into oncoming traffic to avoid me on the shoulder because the cars don't feel safe, never mind the pedestrians. Further, you see almost a head-on collision on Hatley and Milburn, and then further you see the picture that started off this whole slideshow of a couple of mothers walking their children to the lagoon who have to walk on the road because you can't walk with your child and hold their hand and not go onto the road. It's too shallow. So all those things together, I think I just really wanted to point out that no other road has this kind of attention, and there's a reason for it, and we really have to understand that it's true. Please endorse for planning purposes the 21 through 31 prioritization of sidewalk and bicycle infrastructure projects contained within the report titled Summary Report Colwood Active Transportation Network Plan Project Foundations, including Sidewalk Projects 10A Milburn Drive, which you will hear, I think, next. Really appreciate your time. Sorry it was long-winded. We have a lot to say, obviously, and we really hope that we can count on your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, I'm just checking in. Nobody had any questions. We're moving along on our agenda to new business. And I'd like to invite Carrie Clark, the Manager of Development Services, to introduce the item 6.1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Carrie Clark. Before you is the 2020 Annual Approving Officers Report for information. This report provides a summary of the 2020 land assets obtained through subdivision. So a few quick facts for you. 160 freehold lots were approved through the Land Title Act. 28 strata lots were approved through the Strata Property Act. And the land assets obtained include road, park, statutory rights of ways, environmentally sensitive areas secured by Section 219 covenants. I am happy to answer any questions you might have regarding this report. Thank you.
Councillor Kobayashi.
full of beans tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, Carrie. Another one of your quality reports. Thank you very much. That was really well done. I was just trying to figure which part of Ocean Boulevard was closed. Like, was that on the far end, or like, I wasn't too sure when you had that in one of the paragraphs. And was I fell asleep at the wheel? I'm not too sure.
No problem. I'm actually going to defer this to Brent Molnar because he had better details than I have on this specific item.
Okay.
Through the chair, thank you very much, Carrie. To Councillor Kobayashi, that portion of Ocean Boulevard that was closed was just the water. Sorry, you can barely see me there. Was just the waterfront portion of the crescent, which was closed to through traffic in during the COVID.
Oh, okay. Now I know what you're talking about. I thought there was something permanent here, so I wasn't too sure the way it was worded. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up with you, Brent? That wasn't the parking lot area?
I'm sorry. I'm just flipping through the approving officer's report because there was no subdivision activity down there, but talking about Ocean Boulevard, it was the parking lot area, the area between the two gates. And so we closed the gates for COVID at the response of the Emergency Operating Committee for COVID. And I'm just madly flipping to see where the approving officer's report speaks to that in necessity. But happy to answer any sort of questions that may be had.
Yeah, it's
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
I believe that the piece of Ocean Boulevard closed was the park and ride.
That's what we just said.
Yes, and that's how it relates to this report. That's exactly right, Councillor Baxter. My apologies for the informality. That's exactly right. It was the park and ride, and that is on Ocean Boulevard. And thank you for the correction. My apologies.
Excellent. Okay, next on my list of hands, I have Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, so my question is about park dedication, which is mentioned quite a bit in the report. So with the coming of the Parks Master Plan, we're nearly there, how will the approving officer use the Parks Master Plan to guide the creation of parks in subdivisions?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Baxter. The approving officer will use the Parks Master Plan to guide subdivision through issuance of the preliminary layout assessment, which is a requirement of subdivision, lays out the requirements of subdivision to the applicant. And if Brent Molnar would like to add any additional information, he's available.
Thanks. Through the chair, thank you very much, Carrie. Appreciate that very much. So the approving authority by the statute is council. It is not a delegated authority. And where council has considered a Parks Master Plan and incorporated that Parks Master Plan as part of the official community plan, or in sitting separate from the official community plan, the approving officer can reach to it for guidance in obtaining of parklands. It deals with more significant areas than what would be necessary for a 3-lot subdivision or whatnot. But it does provide guidance for the approving officer in taking areas for parkland or accumulating areas for parkland through subsequent subdivision activities. Where park is proposed by a subdivision that is not contained in the official community plan or directed by the Parks Master Plan, council remains the approving authority for the acceptance or not of that parkland. I hope that answers your questions, but I'll remain active on video just in case.
Well, the crux of my question is around the increasing cost of maintaining parks and the fact that whenever we create new parks, we keep adding to that cost, and therefore that needs to be done deliberately and thoughtfully. But as far as I'm aware, council isn't involved in that decision to create new parks. No, not when you come to the smaller ones and the smaller subdivision.
So in this, through the chair, so in a small subdivision, the provision for obtaining parkland associated with subdivisions is where 3 or more lots are created. In that case, parkland can accumulate about 5%. Many of those small pocket parks would not, you are very correct, show up in a parks master plan because they're just too small and local. There again, staff looks to the provisions of the master plan, looks for guidance in the official community plan, and will select whether we take cash in lieu or write a report to council to accept a park. Council is the authority for accepting parks, not staff.
Okay, thank you. That gives me about a month. Thank you.
Thank you. And next I have Councillor Parkinson.
Sorry, I was going to chime in on the Park and Ride versus Ocean Boulevard debate, so I'm good.
Okay. I will move along. I have Mayor Martin next.
Thank you. Really quick questions. I'm not good at math, and I don't understand 106,000 square meters, which was the total amount of land assets that we received this year. Can staff tell me what that is, like acreage wise or something in an imperial? I know I'm being old here, but I can't understand what 106,000. In the same vein, we got 59,000 square meters of parkland. And I don't know what that means. Like, can somebody give me any kind of calculation on that? And then my final question is, we got 41,000 square meters of road, which I don't care what the distance is on that. But do we actually consider roads an asset, or do we consider it a liability?
I think I might be better to answer that if I may, Carrie. And through the chair, the land for which the road resides is considered an asset. The structure of which the road is constructed of is not what is contained in the approving officer's report. So the physical infrastructure might be a depreciating asset, you are very correct, but the land is not. The approving officer's report speaks to the land acquisition.
Okay, did you have any information for Mayor Martin on the sizes, the square footage versus acres or hectares or?
I have got my calculator out and
let me help here. So every 10,000 square meters is a hectare or 2.5 acres. So 100,000 square meters is 25 acres. 40,000 square meters is 10 acres.
That's right. So 59,000 square meters of park, which is the total on page 51 of 101, is 5.9 hectares of land.
Excellent.
And sorry, and what I heard Councillor Parkinson say was it's 25 acres of land, which is the 106,000, roughly. And it's just rough. I don't need official numbers. I just wanted a ballpark. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm just checking.
Chair. If I didn't see any other person's hands up, so I'm happy to move to the motion just to receive as well.
Okay, I was going to ask a question, but can you hang on to your motion for
absolutely?
I would like to know, in terms of the report, it's a very thorough report, and I do really appreciate that. But it also talks about our Section 219 covenanted lands. And I would really like to know whether or not that is working well for us. We've had some issues in the past where some of our desires that have been secured through Section 219 covenants haven't always come to fruition. So I'm just wondering, is there a different way that we could handle some of our goals, or is it just a matter of understanding what we're asking for?
Through the chair, Brent Molnar here to answer that. I'm going to put on a different hat than that of the deputy approving officer and put on the manager land development. The preservation of land through Section 219 covenants, you're very correct. It requires people to be informed. You can place a covenant on people's property, but unless they read it, they don't know the limitations. through the act of real estate and conveyance of property, a solicitor is required to review those titles and charges. But if you've been engaged in any of these transactions, it happens pretty quick and you don't have a lot of choices, and we can't speak to the inclusion and the review that undertakes at that office. What staff have proposed for this year is we are taking on a fair bit of land under Section 219 preservation clause in the Olympic View area. We'd like to couple that works with an information package that goes with those owners that identify not only that land is being retained for site preservation purposes, but that also speaks to the why, which all speaks to environmental considerations and offsets, not just buffers or setbacks, but the actual environmental integrity for site adaptive design that's being applied on that land. There's a budget item that will be reviewed as part of our draft budget process that you'll be seeing later this week for a nominal amount to work with a consultant on developing that framework as we try to increase our education to our community about the value of these lands and the covenant areas that are associated with some developments. So we hope that your opinion will change. It can be effective or not, but we respect the fact that it is complicated, especially when you're dealing with the private property owner and it changes property to property.
Great, thank you. And just my very last question is about the amount of roadway that we have received. And I'm just wondering, it seems like what we really need is more ability to move in and through Colwood on mostly our collector roads. So I'm just wondering if it's not possible at this time, that's fine, but perhaps in future reports, we could get a kind of a breakdown of what percentage are considered collector roads and what percentage are local service roads.
Thank you, received, and we will do such. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mayor Martin, you wish to make a motion?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just move to receive.
Moved by Mayor Martin to receive the report as presented. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Okay, we are moving on, and pardon me while I'm juggling my multiple agendas here, to our next item, which is 6.2, the summary report for Colwood Active Transportation Network Plan Project Foundations. And I would like to introduce Mr. Ian Borhill, the Director of Community Planning, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure for me to introduce this item before asking Dan Casey of Urban Systems to make his presentation. Tonight, staff have brought forward options to plan for sidewalk and bike lane upgrades that will be undertaken over the next 10 years. This is to fulfill Council's strategic directions and to inform the compilation of an updated transportation master plan that's intended to be completed later this year. Staff recommend that the committee in turn recommend to Council that one of the prioritized project lists presented tonight, one of which includes projects requested by the public, not already identified in the transportation master plan, these being Milburn Drive and Haida Drive, and further that staff recommend that the list of projects selected by Council be used to guide the city's capital project planning activities in 2021. Next, I'd like to welcome Dan Casey, a registered professional planner specializing in transportation planning, who has led a consulting team engaged by the city to analyze the transportation master plan's proposed sidewalk and bicycle infrastructure projects for the purposes of creating the requested capital project plans with order of magnitude cost estimates, which we'll discuss in more detail. At the agreement of the chair, I'd like to give it over to Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ian. So before I get going, I'm going to share my screen here. So if you could all let me know when we see a bright red cover slide here.
Yep, it's there.
Excellent. Good. Good evening, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you once again here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Active Transportation Network Plan Project Foundations. I will ask, I understand that I've had some intermittent audio and mic over past sessions, so please raise a hand or let me know if I cut out for any more than a second or two. I'd gladly pause and take a step back.
So far, so good.
That's great. Okay, so project purpose. The project purpose here is to establish project foundations for a comprehensive active transportation network plan process. It's also to identify high priority active transportation network improvements. And it's to support council's desire to invest in active transportation infrastructure. Really, that's the basis for the work we undertook and the process that I'm going to walk through and summarize for you tonight. So some background, this initiative is founded on past planning initiatives undertaken by the city. 2006, there was an active transportation plan that was produced. That document identified a large number of possible active transportation improvement projects. So that improvement project list is a sort of a starting point or a basis for the work that was undertaken. 2014, you completed your transportation master plan. So that transportation master plan identifies long-term networks for both sidewalks as well as cycling. And so those were prioritized, and the prioritization of those networks is a foundation for this work. And I'll introduce those in just a second. And then 2018, you completed your official community plan. The official community plan reiterated much of the network planning that was in the transportation master plan. It also included some updated directions specific to how the city intends to prioritize active transportation and broader transportation infrastructure investment. So we've referred to the directions in the official community plan also. A overriding rationale for this whole initiative is really your own mode share targets as expressed in your OCP. Your OCP talks about going from a vehicle mode share of 86% of trips as of the prior census to when the OCP was developed, to a 2038 target of a reduction down to 70% of trips by vehicle. There's a target of a corresponding increase in pedestrian trips from 3% up to representing 10% of all trips, and similar for cycling from 3% to 8% of all trips. So with that in mind and the targeted increases in active transportation trip making, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of building out your network to support these targets. A few other key policies from your official community plan that help guide the prioritization exercise that we've undertaken. Specific to your sidewalk network, the OCP talks about building sidewalks where there are gaps and prioritizing areas around mixed-use centers, schools, and your frequent transit network. Specific to cycling, the OCP talks about building out a network that improves connectivity and links key destinations, such as commercial areas, schools, parks, and community facilities. And so we use this as guidance for the prioritization exercise that we've undertaken. The image on the right-hand side of the screen here is the priority sidewalk network from your transportation master plan. This is our starting point. And so the transportation master plan outlines those routes, those corridors where sidewalks are planned. And we've taken that as a basis for then taking those corridors, taking those improvements that are identified on this map. And that is a real starting point for our prioritization exercise. Also provided in the TMP are some description of how priorities are to be established in terms of building out future sidewalks. And so the TMP talks about sidewalks on both sides of the road in vibrant centers. And those in your transportation master plan are the yellow dots that are shown on the map to the right. The TMP talks about sidewalks on both sides of major streets. It also talks about sidewalks on at least one side near schools, parks, and on bus routes. And so that's important background. We consider where we might prioritize sidewalk investment. Similarly, but specific to cycling, the Transportation Master Plan talks about a priority bicycle network. That's what's shown in the map on the right-hand side. Really what to take note of here is that solid lines, as of 2014, when the TMP was developed, solid lines are existing facilities. Dashed lines or dotted lines are proposed. And so really highlighting there's a fair bit of work to be done to realize that full cycling network. The image on the screen with the photos showing different cycling facility types, I wanted to just bring to the group, just so we understand that a cycling network doesn't just necessarily mean bike lanes. There's a whole menu of possible cycling facility types where some make better sense on adjacent or on roadways of certain characteristics. Others, maybe when you get up to the cycle tracks shown on the image here, those might be more suitable on busier streets where cyclists might benefit more from that physical protection. And so when we talk about build out of the network, it might take in a whole number of different bicycle facility types. So next, how did we prioritize active transportation projects? In a broad sense, there were 3 steps. The first step was to identify candidate projects, and that's using those priority networks for both sidewalks and cycling facilities from your transportation master plan. So we did not reopen the network planning that had been done to the transportation master plan. Rather, we used that network planning as the basis for then running a prioritization exercise. Step 2 was to refine the evaluation criteria that had been used previously back in the initial active transportation plan, but really update it so that it better aligns and better reflects the more recent guidance and direction in the transportation master plan and official community plan. Using those updated criteria, we ran a evaluation exercise on the long list of candidate projects to refine it down to priority projects. Step 3 was to detail out those priority projects. And so to take the shorter list of projects, define a cost for them, and start to walk through a little bit more detail on what the facility type of the facility might actually be. So a couple maps on the screen in front of you. The one on the left was the outcome or the output from a sidewalk network gap analysis. And so you recognize the line work underneath this map is from your transportation master plan. It identified the location of existing sidewalk or walkway facilities. What we're showing here is in yellow are the gaps where the transportation master plan talks about these corridors as part of the priority network, but where no facility is currently in place. So those gaps, those are shown in yellow on the map on the left. On the right-hand side, it's a similar exercise for the cycling network. Line work that is solid, those are existing facilities. Line work that is dotted, those are facilities that that are included in the long-term network, but have not been built. And so those are gaps. Then we get to how did we evaluate candidate projects? And so some general considerations here, and we do have some more refined and detailed considerations specific both to sidewalks and to the cycling network. These here on the screen are more general considerations. So I touched on the first already, is that the transportation master plan networks were used as the basis for this exercise. This exercise emphasizes addressing network gaps, generally addressing network gaps over improving facilities that already exist. So it's about filling those gaps, more so, not exclusively, but more so than improving facilities that are already in place. We looked into balancing high priority projects, but also high value projects. And the idea being making sure that investments that are made in active transportation infrastructure are effective use of public money and allow you to build facilities and build out your network, making good use of your available funds. Consideration was given to opportunities to achieve complete streets improvements, that being where both a project might satisfy a priority identified on both sidewalk network as well as the cycling network. We look for those opportunities, again, being an effective use of public monies. And then lastly, balancing investment throughout Colwood. And so recognizing that there's a desire to make sure that there's a relatively balanced distribution of where investments are made. So specific to the sidewalk network, the following evaluation criteria were used. So 4 general categories. One was existing conditions. So the current condition of the road or the roadside or any facility that was in place. 2 is land use and context. So that included a number of specific criteria around your OCP designations, the presence of public transit, proximity to schools and parks, each of those being sort of an elevating factor in prioritizing a sidewalk project. Street character, so the volume of traffic, the potential for future increases in traffic, the presence of large trucks, and also noted safety collision histories. And then lastly, this piece around balancing investment and realizing as possible equitable distribution throughout the various neighborhoods. So with those,
ask you a quick question on your land use and context. Did you also consider potential developments that are in stream?
So with that, it was based on OCP designations. And
Okay.
then there was some consideration given to opportunities to speed up or slow down projects if we either know or suspect that future development might take place in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question, great question. Okay, so with these criteria in mind, we ran through a bit of an analysis to determine what the recommended priority sidewalk investments might be. And so there's a lot of information on this slide, but that's what's contained on this slide. So on the right-hand side is a map helping identify the specific location of the improvements obviously with number codes corresponding to the table on the left. Table on the left includes the corridor that the improvement is located on. Beneath that is the extent of the improvement along that corridor. We've identified the length, that corridor's general right-of-way width, and then cost. And there's a complexity rating that's in the far right-hand side that helps correspond and is built into that cost value. So I'll go through in order and just briefly introduce each. So number 1, Milburn Road, the portion between Hatley Drive and Cotlow, which is kind of nearby Dunsmuir Middle School. Number 2, Painter Road between Milburn and Dressler, so basically the length of Painter. Worth noting that for projects 1 and 2, they have already been established as budgeted projects of the city. So when I get to the total project value, we've actually excluded the cost associated with those. Number 3, Latoria down in South Colwood between Wishart Road and Royal Bay. Number 4, Lagoon Road, the portion between Heatherbell and Aloha, which is currently a gap in walkway or sidewalk that otherwise exists along that corridor. With Lagoon Road and with the others highlighted in red, we also pulled past publicly requested sidewalk improvements. And so those are noted in red. And so I'll explain in a bit, but some of those were already sort of rising to the top through the prioritization exercise. A few of them were not. And so I'll introduce those as we go through. Number 5 is Milburn Road, an approximately 200-meter segment in front of Sangster Elementary. Number 6, Kelly Road, so the section on the south side between Hatley Plaza and Milburn Road, which is opposite the park and crosswalk. Number 7, Benhomer Drive, which is kind of parallels the south side of the Dunsmuir playing field and school. Number 8, Owens Road, connecting between Wishart Elementary and Painter Road and Dunsmuir. Number 9, Veterans Memorial. So it's about a 300-meter section between a existing sidewalk and pathway that was built associated with a newer redevelopment in the Resolution Place area, and it would connect up from that existing facility to the crosswalk at Cairndale. Number 10 is Hegel Road, so that would be the section between Galloping Goose up to David Cameron Elementary, where there's some sidewalk in place, so connecting along through that section. 10A was identified as Milburn Drive. And so we heard the presentation earlier, and we'd heard some correspondence prior to that. That's been an often requested sidewalk improvement area. And so it didn't work its way through the prioritization exercise because I mentioned earlier that the basis for it really was those transportation master plan networks. But knowing that that was one of the requested improvements, we actually put it through the analysis to the using the same criteria as the other improvements had. And this at approximately 10th is where it worked its way out through the analysis. So indicating that there's definitely some merit there. It's not through the criteria that was used. It's not ranking as high as some of the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 projects above it, but absolutely is making its way onto this list. But I should note when I talk about summarized priority project costs at the end here, these projects 10A and 11A are not included in those figures. So they could be, and they have been costed, but they're not in that summary. I will circle back on that. Number 11, Fulton Road, so up on Triangle Mountain, that being the section between Souk Road and making its way up the hill. There are a couple pieces of sidewalk and walkway that are in place, so this would be linking those up. And then 11A was Hydro Drive, which also working its way up Triangle Mountain, and it just didn't come out with the same priority rating that Fulton Road did. So that's, I know there's a lot of information there. That is the list of 11 priority projects plus the 2 additional public requested. We also wanted to put in front of you some alternatives, we'll say. And so knowing that we ran through the exercise and what I just showed on the previous slide is what is recommended as an outcome of that work. But there are a few others that we wanted to put in front of you, whether sidewalk gaps. And so those are showing on the map in red. Those are locations where they're identified as part of the long-term network, but they don't currently have facility in place. And so worth consideration for those. So that's Cotlow and Dressler, kind of east-west between Wishart Road and Machosen Road. That's Farview Road, also in the vicinity of Dunsmuir Middle School. That's Fulton Road, and that's Souk Road as well. And so that's the portion of Souk Road between roughly where Fulton intersects Souk and then crossing Veterans, so that it would get people, especially to key bus stops in that location and link them up with other facilities. We have some sidewalk upgrades that have been identified as well as possible alternative projects, and those are shown on yellow, in yellow on the map. And those are generally more major roads where facilities are in place, but they could stand to be upgraded. And so we've highlighted those for the group as well. And then lastly, and I think we covered this off on the previous slide, but known publicly requested sidewalk improvements. So Milburn, Lagoon Road, which is covered in the priority project list. Kelly Road, a portion of which is in the priority list. Hegel, same thing. Hydro Drive, which I touched on, which is actually not part of that recommended priority list. And then Fulton Road.
Great. Do you want questions as you go or at the end?
I'm flexible either way.
Okay, Mayor Martin has a question. Mayor Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Really quick, just going back to that last slide, in the sidewalk gap one that I just would like just a little more information on is specifically about Souk Road. And the Souk Road between Machosen and Veterans. Souk Road, I would assume for the city of Colwood, Souk Road is the highest volume of traffic of all our roads. In that gap, I've witnessed families trying to walk in that gap. Why is that gap? How did that gap not hit the top 10? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it would have been identified as a location with a walkway or a shoulder in place.
Oh, okay.
So therefore, not necessarily a priority from that perspective. I think also there's the portion that is west of Veterans. that makes its way westward out to Langford and beyond is under Ministry of Transportation jurisdiction through there as well. And so we are dealing with a different agency there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll move along. We'll switch modes here, and we're going to go to cycling, and then we'll kind of summarize up. And so similar exercise done for the cycling network. We used the criteria that were similar but unique to cycling here. So those being existing roadway condition, 2 being land use and context, similar type criteria as with sidewalks, 3 street character, 4 connectivity. And so this really matters specific to cycling, given that it's more of a kind of a macro network look we're doing here. And it also aligns with some of the direction in your OCP. 5 was this item around balance and achieving neighborhood equity with investment. And 6 was around value and project costs. And so I introduced earlier that there can be quite a range in the costs per meter or per kilometer of installing cycling facilities, depending on what the appropriate facility type is. And so we wanted to give consideration to value here as well. So similar as the sidewalk priority list, we've got the map on the right, we've got the projects on the left in descending order of priority. We've indicated the facility type that would be applied, the project length, the right-of-way width, and the cost. And so I'll go through each of these in order. First, Milburn Road South, so that being the portion in and around Wishart and Lagoon Road, where there would be connecting up with facilities that have more recently been put in place to the south. 2 and 3 were Soup Road, so we've identified them as Soup Road North for the section that extends as far south as Kelly Road, and then Soup Road South for the section between Kelly to at least Milburn Road. Recognizing...
Sorry, just a quick question on the Milburn Road from Wishart to Lagoon. Have you considered whether or not there's any encroachments in the road right of way around the Sangster School area? You know, in terms of, do we have as much room as we think we have, or is there maybe something long-standing there that's not in the right place?
Yeah, good question, good clarification. We did look, I mean, we're looking citywide, network-wide, so we looked at a high level at each of these corridors to make sure that the right-of-way that exists would be sufficient to achieve the extra width that is needed to build the facility. In that case specifically, I don't know off the top of my head whether, I think you're getting at sort of the fencing or the gating that's out in front, and whether that's where that's sitting, whether right of way or private property. It's something we can circle back on. I don't know definitively off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question though. So moving down the list, number 4 was Milburn Road North. So that being the section between Soup Road and Wishart Road, where there's some facilities in place, but they're generally discontinuous. Number 5 is the Kelly Road, the length between Veterans and Soup Road. Number 6, Latoria Road. What's been highlighted is from the built portion in Royal Bay all the way to Veterans Memorial, which does pair up with a portion of the sidewalk that was identified previously. Number 7, Painter Road. And so again, this 2 items of clarity, I guess. 1 is that this does couple up with the sidewalk improvement that was identified. And 2 is that this is another one of those cost items that has already been budgeted for. And so when we get to summarizing the total value or the total costs of these projects, this one's actually out. It's already been dealt with. Number 8 is Wishart Road, the portion from Milburn Road down to about Wishart Elementary and Municipal Hall. And then lastly is this AD Milburn Road Bikeway, which, and this is a prime example where we talk about not all bike facilities need to be bike lanes or separated bike facilities. So this is envisioned as a bikeway that would take cyclists from the Galloping Goose through the established corridor, through the cemetery site, and then via 80 and Milburn Road, which in these sections, until you hit Soup Road, they're relatively low volume traffic-wise, and would make for, with some modest improvements, would make for a very comfortable and safe cycling experience. As with sidewalks, we have highlighted some possible alternative projects. So the list I just went through being the recommendations as outcomes of the prioritization project. We've also highlighted some alternatives for your consideration. And so we've lumped those into some of the projects that would be on more major roads would be dedicated bike lanes or separated facilities. So Belmont Road as an option, Lagoon Road, Cairndale Road, Latoria, and Wishart, the remainder of Wishart. Wishart Road north of Metchosin Road, the section between Metchosin and Souk Road that parallels Royal Roads, has been historically identified as a possible roadside pathway. And so that's on this, shown in this map as well. And then we've also identified a number of these neighborhood bikeways, which are the lower volume, less expensive bike facility types. And so Tipton in the vicinity of Wishart and Painter Road, Dressler, Cotlow again, and just south of there, Brookside Road down in the Latoria Walk area, and then Hegel Road as well as an opportunity to potentially pair it with a sidewalk improvement. And then I have hinted at this as we've gone along here, but specifically for cycling facilities, when we talk about the sidewalk network, generally we're talking about sidewalks. And I think generally we all have a pretty good handle on what that is, more or less. So photo on the left. But when we talk about cycling facilities, I did want to, a lot of time has passed since 2014, since your transportation master plan in the world of cycling facility design. And you have some starting points there in your community on Latoria Boulevard in terms of what we now look for in terms of best practice in cycling facility design. And so I did want to highlight that while the TMP talks about buffered bike lanes being sort of the preferred facility type as your network builds out, would encourage and lead the group toward at least consideration of these more protected and safer cycling facilities like what's shown on the top right-hand side of your screen. And so would encourage those as more of a default than the past buffered bike lanes. So to summarize, on the priority projects that have been recommended through this prioritization exercise, sidewalk projects, there are 11 sidewalk projects, total length of 4.7 kilometers, and a total cost of 5.4 million. Keep in mind that includes only those that were recommended and does not include those Painter and the portion of Metchosin that have already been budgeted for. So 5.4 million. Cycling projects, 9 total projects, total length of about 7.8 kilometers and a total cost of 6.7 million. So and the same caveats apply on that cost. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you for your time, and we'll remain on hand for any questions, clarifications you might have. Thank you.
Dan, I just wanted to ask you very quickly, did you consider the path in the east side of Havenwood Park? We have very few east-west connections, and that's shown in the Transportation Master Plan as a dotted line from BMP to Wishart Road. It's also a good school collection area for Royal Bay High. Did it get considered?
It was included in the exercise. It didn't come out in this top 10, top 11 that okay. Some of the others did.
Perfect. Thank you. Questions? Oh, there we go. I was looking in the wrong spot. Councillor Parkinson, I believe you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, I'd like to make a motion, and then if I get a seconder, I'll be happy to motivate.
No seconders at committee of the whole. You'll have to save your motivation for at council.
Interesting. Well, I'll make a motion and then I'll talk about it. To be kind of like motivating, but different apparently. I'd like to move that the report titled Summary Report Colwood Active Transportation Network Plan Project Foundations be received, and that committee recommend to council that staff proceed to tender and construct. I'm hearing feedback. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. Okay. The staff proceed to tender and construct the chosen roads and painted road projects as currently planned in 2021. The staff immediately initiate pre-design and project scoping for the following projects. Return to council with the results of the pre-design and scoping exercise in time to design the works, tender the works, construct the works in 2022. Those projects would be Kelly Road sidewalk from Souk to Machosen, Ben Homer Road sidewalk, Owen Road sidewalk, Hegel Road sidewalk, and the 80 Road Machosen Road bikeway. And that staff commence pre-design and project scoping for the following projects. Return to council with the results of the pre-design and scoping exercise in time to design and tender the works for construction in 2023. The Lagoon Road sidewalk, the Fulton Road sidewalk, Machosen Road Sanctor School sidewalk, and Machosen Road South bike lane, and Machosen Road North bike lane. And the Public Works pave a temporary sidewalk from the Wishart-Latoria intersection to the pathway to Outrigger Place. That's approximately 20 meters. And the communication creates signage to encourage walkers not to walk on the side of Latoria Road east of Wishart Road, but to access Royal Bay Secondary Painter Trail and nearby locations via the streets and sidewalks within the Royal Bay subdivision. And that prior to the 2023 budget exercise, staff return to council with an update to this report, prioritizing remaining projects and summarizing any feedback received on the sidewalk and cycling infrastructure program. And if I may just make a few comments, and I'm going to ask, maybe if I could get Dan to put up the, start with a sidewalk list, that would be very useful for my comments. But essentially what I see is that what we have here is a bunch of projects prioritized in a good way, but you know, we could argue forever over the priority of these things and which one should go when and how. And I've tried to select an approach which I believe is achievable and actually gets us moving. Obviously, we can imagine if we pick the absolute hardest project to start on, it might be a number of years before we're ready to move, and that would delay everything. So I'm more of the mind to let's get going. I don't think that any of us, that we could get agreement from ourselves and through the public process that's proposed as part of this, that that's the perfect list and should be followed exactly that order. So I just wanted to take more of a practical approach to get going. We know we have projects scheduled for 2021. I looked in 2022 for projects that I thought were feasible and easier. I was looking essentially, the projects I tried to pick were ones that didn't have complex drainage or grade issues along with them. If you can imagine, you know, when we're talking on the, you know, Ben Homer, Owens Road, those are flat, not a lot of other issues besides a sidewalk on those streets. The drainage is dead simple with given the gravelly soils there. So much less complex than say Fulton Road, where we have steep road grades, steep driveways coming down and storm drainage to deal with. So that's why I selected the ones I did that I thought were practical and could be achievable in the 2022 construction season. Projects for 2023 were I thought beneficial, but probably too complex to be ready in 22. And then I asked if we could have this this report, I see the public process and everything ready to come back in time for the 2023 budget, so that hopefully we could keep continuing to do sidewalk and cycling projects every year until we knock off all the priorities. So when we look at the sidewalk priority projects, the first two, number 1 and 2, are scheduled to be done already. I don't think there's any holdup on those, so I would expect them to get constructed this year. Latoria Road, Wishart to Royal Bay, I mean, that's a great project. I can see why people would like to have a sidewalk there, but trying to do the sidewalk separate from the actual roadway that will get done as part of the Royal Bay development at some time is just struck me as being overly ambitious and just fraught with potential problems and conflicts, and that really that sidewalk should get built when the road gets built. The Lagoon Road I felt was important. That is the collector road. I think we should finish that off, but I just couldn't see getting it done quickly. That's why I allowed a year for that one. There'll be some consideration which side of the road to build a sidewalk on and other issues, so give some time for that. Same number 5, the Metchosin Road Sangster Elementary frontage. Great project. Obviously, some coordination required with school district and everything, so I bumped that back a year. Kelly Road. I did include those sidewalks as something that I thought we should get going on quickly. There are some sidewalks there. There may be some concern that perhaps when we get a pre-design, we might want to consider whether that was a priority or not. But it is kind of nice if you look at the that with some of the cycling projects that we're starting to create the diagonal through the town, sort of going from Metchosin Souk or Kelly Souk up to 80 Road and across to the Galloping Goose there. It's a nice little connection, I think. Ben Holman Owens, as I said, those are pretty easy and straightforward and are the ones that I felt that we could actually get the scoping and the pre-design done in time to construct next year. And if not them, what? Veterans Memorial, again, the same thing. When we'll have the major roadworks happening there at some point, we may want to do it all, the roadwork and the sidewalk at the same time rather than separate out the sidewalk. Hegel Road, I like just because it did the connection through to, again, that diagonal across town, that works good. Milburn Road, we heard a lot about Milburn Road tonight. There's obviously issues there. I think it was last week we decided that we should look at some traffic solutions to look at the problems on Milburn Road as well. So really, is it sidewalks? What side is it? Is it no parking? What's the traffic? There's some thinking to be done there. So I couldn't see plugging that one in the short term, but hopefully that would be one of the ones that would get scheduled for the 2023 exercise anyway. Same with Fulton Road. I'd like to get started on that one because I think Triangle Mountain desperately needs sidewalks. So I tried to move that one as quickly as I could. And Haida Drive, another nice project that will get its weighting probably from the more detailed input from the public when we get there. And Dan, if you wouldn't mind switching over to the cycling list, I could yap about that too, and then I'll give the floor to somebody else. So the Metchosin Roads, number 1 and number 4, I thought were nice projects. And again, they fall into the category of being a little easier, and the terrain is flat and the soils are gravelly, so that the drainage and grading issues wouldn't be extreme. But they're big projects. So again, I had suggested we could take a little longer on the pre-design and scoping of those ones. The Souk Road projects, north and south, great projects, but probably at some extent linked with whatever the rapid transit system is going to do in that area. So I couldn't see programming them in the next couple of years. Kelly Road is you know, a big issue. At some point, we're going to have to do a lot of work on Kelly Road. It should do a lot of work on Kelly Road, and whether we piecemeal it or do it all at once is a decision for discussion, I think. Latoria Road, again, I think that has to get tied in with the ultimate construction of the road. Painter Road is due for construction right away, so I'm happy about that. Wishart Road, we have some thinking to do on Wishart. I know there's talk of cross-section discussions and that coming up, so I didn't plug it in, but obviously it would come in the overall list. And the 80 Road, Metchosin, again, it's a quick little thing, not rated highly here, but I thought was, again, nice to have that diagonal cross-section heading over to Galloping Goose, and an alternate, real alternate for people wanting to cycle but not wanting to go down Souk Road. So that was my thinking. I hope, again, I'm not trying to suggest that my list is any more prioritized than anybody else's. I think we can talk about priorities forever, but what I do think is that what I've suggested is a practical approach to keep us moving on the construction of sidewalks and cycling facilities while we finalize some of the bigger picture issues. So sorry to take up so much time there, Madam Chair, but wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Great. Next on my speakers list is Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we talking about his motion then right now, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you my 2 cents worth. I'm not ready to vote on the motion. This is the first motivation I've heard. It sort of makes sense. I listened with great intent here, but I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around everything that he said right now, and so it's a bit of a you know, I think he put this email out on Friday or so, but I only had a chance to start looking at it today. But didn't understand the philosophy behind it until tonight. So, but I can't get my head around this. And so my only other question, I guess it's to staff is, I guess is, what does staff think about this? What was just said right now? I'd certainly like to have their input into it, but I think that we just need, if there's no, if we can delay this a little bit, I'd like to wrap my head around it because I am not ready to vote on this. Thank you.
Sure. I'll just also remind you that council will see this again. In other words, we craft the motion here at committee of the whole, and then this comes forward to council. So there would be another opportunity to refine somewhat through amendments at council if you're not feeling prepared tonight. Next on my speakers list, I have Councillor Baxter. Councillor Baxter? Dan, could you put the slide down so I can see everyone again? Thank you. And Councillor Baxter is gone. I'm moving on then to Councillor Logan.
I think he's back.
Oh, Councillor Baxter, I was calling on.
Sorry, I was looking at Councillor Parkinson's email, which unfortunately I haven't printed out, so I could know what roads he was proposing. But I have a question about Lagoon Road to begin with. It looks from the map on page 53 of the agenda as if the blue indicates which side of the road the sidewalk is intended to go on Lagoon Road. Am I interpreting that properly?
Ian or Dan?
I'm just trying to find page 53 of your agenda here.
It is map 1 sidewalk priority projects.
Okay, so the blue, and sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Lagoon goes down to Ocean Boulevard from Machosen.
Yeah, so the kind of the turquoise, brighter, thin blue line, those are identifying locations of current walkways. And so those came, I believe, from your transportation master.
No, this is the map. Can you see it?
No, it's your virtual background is hiding it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could interject.
Sure.
So Dan, I believe Councillor Baxter is talking about map 1 sidewalk priority projects as stated in your report.
Okay.
And I'll take a shot at the answer, and if feel free to follow up, Dan, if you think it can be improved. We did not look at which side of the road the sidewalk would be built for each road section. The idea was that we were going to assign costs based on one side of the road sidewalk projects. So it was not, the blue line is not indicative of which side of the road, beyond the fact that there is sidewalk on portions of one side of Lagoon Road already. It is not meant to show which side it would be proposed to be built.
Okay, so then my next question is the potential walkway on the north side of Lagoon Road. Would that not be built by the developer of that property?
So if I could circle back on that comment and on Ian's, the gap that's been identified specifically on this section of Lagoon Road, the intent was a gap fill on the south side of the road.
I understand that, but that's not my question. My question is, wouldn't the developer of the property, the north side fronts, wouldn't they be paying for and building the sidewalk there and probably Brent Molnar is the best one to reply to that question.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor Baxter, I am here. Thank you very much, and I can answer that question. I think it was roughly discussed with Councillor Parkinson, talked about some of the obstacles for Latoria. That certain sections of that road are the developer's obligation, as well as the land to be provided for the ultimate build out are the developer's obligation. That is exactly the same consideration for Lagoon. It does form part of the Two Waters Development Agreement to build that on the north side of the road, and would probably be necessary for the developer to have a built form context as part of the retention strategy for that road edge on that north side. In regards to the considerations for Mr. Casey and Mr. Borehill in the consideration, I don't believe that they took into account developable areas in the proposal and itemization that you see before you tonight. I could be corrected by either party, but I don't believe that was part of the consideration at hand.
Okay, well, since it is obviously will eventually be a consideration, because it seems like we've got a lot of sidewalks to build eventually, and building ones that other people are going to pay for would seem like a waste. Isn't this an argument for actually building a sidewalk on, my mind's going blank, Milburn, since nobody's going to build that for us, and that is a way for people to get down to the beach on a similar line?
You are correct. The development potential on Milburn is very low, and it is unlikely that anyone will build it on our behalf.
Okay, so when we come to talk about this at as a budget item, I would certainly be bringing that up, as it would seem to me that we're wasting the money, and if we're going to build it on Lagoon, I'd rather build it on the south side, because I think eventually you need sidewalks both sides there anyway. But it does seem like a good reason to build it on Milburn. Councillor Parkinson, have you included Lagoon in your list of scheduled items?
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I had suggested that would be one to start the pre-design and project scoping in order to construct in 2023.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thinking about Milburn, and I've walked Milburn often, and I've always disliked it, and I think the biggest reason is that the steep slopes either side, down on one side and up on the other, don't leave much room other than the actual road surface for parked cars and walking people. And I think that's probably the biggest problem it faces. This is a question to Dan. In the process of deciding on priority, did a factor like that issue of what other land other than the road surface was actually available for walking on right now, did that come into the consideration at all?
It did. We had a existing condition criteria, and so there was a rating applied based on how good or not the walking or the cycling condition was or is.
Okay. The issue of sidewalks that might be built on Kelly, I think the biggest issue there, Councillor Parkinson made some reference to it, is that the sidewalks should probably be done after the sewers, because I think Kelly's probably our top priority for sewers. And since it's probably relatively close, building the sidewalks before the sewers would seem to be a bit wasteful. Was that considered at all?
Through the chair, we did have conversations on where there might be opportunities to align sidewalk or cycling projects with servicing projects or other projects. But that one specifically actually did not come up. And your line of thinking makes perfect sense to me in terms of aligning the timing on those.
Okay. And thinking specifically about Painter, which is on the cycling list and the sidewalk list, I think there is a mention in the report that when there's a project on each road, there will be an attempt to do them at the same time. Is that the intent generally?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, again, easier to do, cost savings, etc. Okay, then I'm done for now, but I'm going to have to go and actually read Councillor Parkinson's email with greater intent, and I might be back.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Martin, you are next.
Sorry, I think Councillor Logan was next because you called him and then you went back to Councillor Baxter.
Looked at my list, it was the other way around, so I was trying to be fair, thinking I
Oh,
messed up.
well, okay, then Councillor Logan should stay quiet and I should keep talking. So a couple things. I'm supportive of the premise of what Councillor Parkinson's trying to do in moving this forward. I do wish the motion changes significantly compared to what was recommended by staff. So I would like to look to our CAO to make a comment on that. I'd also like to look to our CFO and answer the question of if this motion moved forward and it was passed through council, what would be the funding sources? And are the funding sources significantly different than what was the staff recommendation?
Mr. Earl?
Thank you, Chair Day. I guess administration would be pleased to work with whatever resolutions come out of this and then make it through council proper. At the end of the day, council directed us through the strategic plan to bring forward and create a 10-year list for both bike and sidewalk. The motion that's currently being debated creates a 3-year list, but then in 2023 asks us to return to fundamentally complete that list. And so I think either approach can work. That said, once council, if council were to approve either this motion or an amended motion or one of the motions contained in the recommendations, ultimately that would then need to circle back through a budget process and receive funding. This motion as it's written, and I tried to capture it, but my instinct is this feels like $3 to $4 million worth of spending. At the end of the day, council would need to authorize the funding sources for that. And I think Ms. Hepting will likely be able to provide specific commentary on that.
Ms. Hepting.
Hi there, thank you through the chair. So as it's been mentioned tonight, there are a couple of these projects that have been specifically identified in the draft financial plan that was published last week. The funding sources for those projects was both gas tax and road DCCs. And moving forward, there remains some gas tax funding, but there would also need to be consideration of other funding sources, including debt financing, which would then be serviced through property taxation. So there's a few sources to be considered, and the projects that we will be discussing later this week as we get into budget deliberations consider both gas tax funding and road DCCs.
This is a follow-up, Chair.
Sure.
So how is this, and I guess this would be either probably to our CFO, how if we're working through this motion I'm going to assume is going to take us at least a month to a month and a half to get to for council to approve it and for it to go through all the steps. By that time, budget will already be passed. So how do we cross the two between us having a budget that we probably already passed with a motion that's going to be asking for work that we haven't actually given staff direction to move forward with yet?
Ms. Hepting?
Thank you through the chair. Excellent question. So if there is any direction given that requires the authorization of spend for 2021 works, we would be looking at consideration of a financial plan amendment. Otherwise, this information would be considered upon compilation of the 2022 through 2026 financial plan, which staff will be compiling this fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's all my questions.
Great, thank you. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will be supporting Councillor Parkinson's motion. I appreciate his logic, actually, and appreciate the fact that we're going after projects that are relatively simple in nature up front and to get them out of the way. My question, though, and perhaps this is more to staff, is I notice the priorities. They're kind of a group of piecemeal projects addressing various issues in different parts of the municipality, but I don't see one or two or three large projects that would really qualify or encourage us to apply for grant opportunities. So I'm looking like Kelly Road is an example, or doing the full design of Machosen Road or even Souk Road to go after the multi-million-dollar grant opportunities that the feds and the provincial governments are rolling out. So I wonder if staff would recommend how we would or should we go down that road, or with the current projects that we have before us, can we bundle them in such a way that we market them as a specific program, like a Safe Routes to School that would include Ben Homer and Owens and the like, where that may qualify for a large grant opportunity? Maybe that's to Brent or to Robert.
Thank you. Who would like to take that question, Mr. Earl or Mr. Molnar?
Thank you, Chair Day. I'm happy to answer. Administration are always very nimble when it comes to approaches if federal and or provincial grants hit the table. And so if we discover a grant becomes available and we don't believe we have a project within our financial plan that best fits it, we will return to you looking for specific permission to create the amendments required to put that project in place. We have in the market right now applications for grants for some of the projects already listed, and we will actively chase capital grants when they become available.
Great. Anything else, Councillor Logan? No? Okay, Councillor Johnson, you're up.
Well, I think we've batted this around, so I'll be brief. I'm going to speak in support of this motion, primarily because I've never built a sidewalk in my life, and Stuart has. But I did have a question, mostly probably targeted at Brent. When we're talking sidewalk, say, for instance, on Painter Road, does that include the in-ground works as well? Like your budget there is that complete with like culverting and drains or storm drains or what have you that's required for that stretch of roadway as well?
Thanks very much. Through the chair to Councillor Jensen. Yeah, yes, the sidewalk work on Painter Road, it does include curbside drainage, portions of drainage enclosure, as well as bike lane. We have coordinated that works with the school district, so it does include that. If there was extraneous work like water main replacement or sanitary main construction, it is not included at present, but Painter Road is fine with both of those. My hand is up for another factor on some of the considerations may be affected by water main replacement schedule that hasn't been considered or tabled in the motion. Tonight was the first time I'd heard the motion as proposed by Councillor Parkinson, and that would be part of the information that we bring back to council if this motion did proceed, is consideration for the CRD water main replacement schedule, as well as tying that into the sanitary project, which may form critical parts of the expenditure considerations, and re-ring roads more than once. And so we'll be pleased to see this come forward if it makes it through council. Thank you.
Excellent.
Sorry, as a wraparound, Brent, wherever we're planning these sidewalks, it does include the in-ground servicing that's required for that stretch of roadway, or is that a separate budget item?
At present, the two stretches of roadway where we've considered sidewalk improvements, which are Painter Road and Machosen Road, are served by sanitary sewers. So we're complementing works that already have those works installed. So we tend to be following after them. And I think that what the intent would be is to couple them together to try and bridge that.
Yeah, right on.
Thank you. Are you done, Ms. Councillor Johnson? Okay, excellent. I will move on then. Oh, I had Councillor Baxter. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Baxter? You're still on mute.
All right. Yes, I do. So in regards to the section of Kelly Road mentioned by Councillor Parkinson, I don't think the sewer issue actually arises with the sidewalks on that stretch, because the mall's already connected and the newer development across the road was connected when that was built. But I have a question for staff, and I apologize if I actually missed something that was close to the answer. But does the list put forward in the proposed motion, does it in any way leave out any projects that you had already moved close to being able to build, such that what I'm asking is, were you ready to build things in 2021 or 2022, which are now being postponed? That's the basic question.
Okay.
So we're through the chair to Councillor Baxter, the only works proposed for 2021 this year was Painter as a priority, followed with Machosen as the year ended up. So I think we were going to be doing Machosen because Painter needs to be done before the school season starts. So we're trying to get that critical component built before September. And so Machosen would then start after that. And so this year, the only other works that were proposed to move into RFQ for 2022 was the works at Souk Road and Machosen. We would likely have to defer that intersection study and works to make room, as advised by Mr. Earl, to make room for capacity to be able to consider what's at hand. As indicated, I haven't considered the proposal from Councillor Parkinson. Tonight was my first blush at it, and it'll be subject to council's consideration before it moves forward. Thank you.
Okay, then I would ask that if, after consideration, staff feel that this new list of roads would in any way mean we would actually achieve less because of swapping projects, that you inform council so that we can reconsider if necessary. And with that, I'm going to propose an amendment to Councillor Parkinson's motion, and that is that we replace Lagoon with Milburn in this motion. So that's the amendment. Replace Lagoon with Milburn. And my intent in doing that is simply to avoid building a piece of Lagoon that will be built by somebody else in the not too distant future.
Okay, so I have Councillor Kobayashi, Mayor Mountain, and Mr. Molnar on my list.
Thank you very much, Chair Dave.
Oh, hey, sorry, just I'm doing too many things at once here. I'm retaining that list, and for discussion, our discussion is now moving on to discussion about the amendment. Do you wish to speak to the amendment, or do you want to retain your spot for when we come back after the amendment?
I'll retain my spot, please. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Martin, did you want to retain your spot or speak to the?
I do retain my spot, but I do wish to comment on the amendment as well.
Okay, so I'm going to lower everybody's hands and I will ask for new hands to speak to the amendment, please. And as if that's cumbersome, but I'm still getting used to all this. And first up, I have Mr. Molnar.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I don't mean to trump the other parties and council members that are here. I think with Milburn, before CRD had planned to replace the water main on Milburn in 2023. I am not sure if their intended progress remains as such. I only table that information for council so that they're aware in the consideration of the amendment. The amendment doesn't need to suffer a change. Staff can merely report back on the intended schedule through a memo if that's agreeable.
That's good information. Thank you very much. And next, I have Councillor Parkinson and then Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to oppose this amendment. I understand completely Councillor Baxter's concern for Milburn Drive. We had a good presentation tonight. The solution to Milburn Drive, in my estimation, is going to be quite a bit more complex than looking at sidewalks on Lagoon. We last week authorized staff to spend money trying different fixes in the way of traffic calming that may be, is it a traffic issue? Is it a sidewalk issue? Is it a parking issue? I don't want to not address those things or look at it or come up with the best answer. Lagoon is the collector road. The concept of who pays for sidewalks, quite frankly, I think if the developer paid for the sidewalks, he would claim DCC credits. If the sidewalk gets built by the city, they would use DCC monies. So I'm not sure the fact that, yes, the developer's on the hook to build it as the developer has been for the last 10 or 15 years, whenever they started this project. None of us can with any accuracy predict when they might actually get around to that corner of the site and what would happen. So I think I put Lagoon in there as what I believe is a manageable piece of infrastructure that could get constructed, not next year, but the year after. I quite honestly don't believe Milburn would be resolved in the same time frame and would be able to meet that schedule. So I think Lagoon is the way to go. So I'll vote against your amendment, Michael. Thank you.
Mayor Martin on the amendment.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Parkinson needs to record my statement. I concur.
Okay, and I'm going to, just speaking to the amendment, I am very concerned about the potential for the developer to kind of be let off the hook, only because I've seen that happen in the past. We had a big gap. We filled that gap, and our developer ended up getting a better deal on his development because of it. So to the tune, in that case, that I remember, about $300,000, which is, you know, it's not huge comparing to the numbers that we're looking at, but it was pretty darn big for our budgets of the day. So I think that is very important. I hope that staff will be able to have a look at this motion and bring back more information if this is carried and comes forward to council. That's it for me. I think I have a hand up from Mayor Martin. Is that on the amendment? No? All right. I'm just going to figure out how to lower those hands again. There we go. Thanks, Mayor Martin. So we are on the amendment to the motion, which is to swap Lagoon Road with Milburn Road. And is there anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? Last chance. Not seeing any. I am going to look for those opposed to the amendment. Okay, I have Councillor Jansen, Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Logan, Councillor Parkinson, and Mayor Martin opposed. So that fails.
It was a stolen vote.
And so we are back to the main motion, and I do have a speaking order already recorded. I know that Mayor Martin wants to speak again, and Councillor Kobayashi, you were next up on the list, but I'm going to jump just in front of you just for my 1 point because I forgot to give myself a turn to talk. And that is just, Councillor Parkinson, I really appreciate your motion. I appreciate that you wrote it down in advance, even though some of us had busy lives and couldn't read it as carefully as we'd like. I think it's reasonable, but I am looking for more information to come forward and flesh this out, particularly whether or not taking this action could net less money coming into the city to help pay for it from development, and also whether or not there are specific areas that may need to wait, such as a water main issue or other technical details. But that's it for me. Councillor Kobayashi, you're up.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Yes, it just goes back to why I'm confused. I mean, I fundamentally understand what Councillor Parkinson has said in his motion, and I support it. But right now, it comes back to what we were supposed to be discussing. You know, it's clearly here that we were supposed to come up with a priority list. That's what the motion is all about. And now we're talking about implementation or how we're going to do this, what's the best way. And then the other part of it is also, it looks like we didn't have enough criteria when we put this priority list together, because, you know, you talk about what the DCCs are going to cover, you know, potential sewers going into certain places, potential road improvements going in. So we didn't have all the factors. So, you know, when you're considering the priorities. So what problem are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve a problem of let's get on with this and let's start building sidewalks? Or are we putting together a priority list for planning purposes? And that's what the motion was about. So that's why I'm confused, okay? So they are two separate things, in fact. But right now there are a number of factors that Councillor Parkinson has brought up that I go, holy crap. Yeah, this wasn't considered in these priorities. Hence, we have a priority list built up on a criteria, a good criteria that was put together by Urban Systems, but there's never been public input or it doesn't look like there's staff or council input. So what I think we're debating right now, I think the problem is we are trying to come up with a priority list. So it sounds like the priority list is wrong. Or it needs to be tweaked. Let me put it that way. It sounds like we've identified all the areas, but it sounds like it has to be tweaked. So shouldn't that be the motion of tweaking it so that we are actually achieving what Councillor Parkinson is suggesting? Because right now I am so confused, because now we've almost thrown out the baby with the bathwater, because that list is all of a sudden invalid with this motion. Like, it means nothing. So what problem are we trying to solve? So if it's a priority list, let's tweak the priority list, like with everything that Councillor Parkinson has stated, because I like what he said. Anyways, that's what I have to say. And that's the only reason why I can't vote on this, is because this is something totally different than what was proposed on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, next on my list is Mayor Martin, but I will let you know also that Councillor Parkinson would like to speak. Would you like to hear him first or speak first?
Oh, it doesn't really matter. If Councillor Parkinson's dying to say something, he can go first.
Okay.
Well, you're just going to agree with me anyway, Mayor. So,
Exactly.
Councillor Kobayashi, honestly, I just wanted to respond that yes, we have a priority list from Urban Systems, a good priority list. But we all know, we've heard tonight, we could debate 10 ways to Sunday. What is the actual best priorities? What should it be? The motion, the report that we got talks about getting public input, to get the public input. So we can follow a good planning exercise and spend a couple of years and tweak and get the absolute perfect priority list. All I'm suggesting is let's start knocking off things that are on the priority list now, that are simple and can be done expeditiously, while this debate that you're interested in happens. That's all.
Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to propose an amendment to Councillor Parkinson's. And it's not a complicated one, everybody. But what I would like to do is, if you look in your agenda and the recommendation from staff, I would also the second last paragraph. So Councillor Parkinson's last paragraph begins with prior to 2023. What I would like to do is also just include the paragraph that's before all of us. It just says, endorse for planning purposes the 2021 to 2031 prioritization of sidewalks and bicycle infrastructure projects contained within the report titled Summary Report, Community Active Transportation Network Plans, Project Foundations, including sidewalk projects 10A Milburn Drive and 11A Haida Drive. And the reason I would like that amendment, Chair, is I'm afraid that we will lose those two, and I do not want the public to feel like those two streets have fallen off our list. And if we don't have that included in this motion, we would just go back to the top 10, which would miss those two roads. And so I think that it still falls within what Councillor Parkinson wishes to do, that those two streets would be included in the analysis of 2023. But hence the reason why I'm making that motion, or that amendment, excuse me.
Okay, I am certainly wishing that I had printed out your email, Councillor Parkinson, so that I could know if that fits with what we've got on the table, but I didn't print it out, so I'm working from my memory. Do you think that accomplishes your amendment that you moved, or is that a problem?
I see no problem with that. That confirms the inclusion of the Haida Drive sidewalks and the Milburn Road sidewalks. That's the wish of council. Good on them. I have no concerns at all with it.
Okay. So we have an amendment to the amendment, and do I have anyone wishing to speak to the amendment to the amendment? Actually, it's the amendment to the amended motion. I have one. Councillor Baxter, is that you wishing to speak to this motion?
Yes, to the amendment.
Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to say that Mayor Martin stole my thunder and did a lot better job than I would have done of it. I will be backing the amendment.
Okay. Anyone else?
Supported that, rats.
Okay, that's great. I see what I missed. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay, anyone opposed to that amendment? I'm not seeing any hands. That is carried. So we have an amended motion on the floor. Does anyone still wish to speak to this motion? All right, seeing none. Anyone opposed to this motion? Seeing none, that is carried. All right, back to my little agenda here. We are very near the end, folks, and I'm on my last brain cell, I warn you. We have included Milburn and we have included Haida. Our next meeting is on March 15th. Actually, that's not quite true. That would be kind of misleading the public. There is another meeting tomorrow evening for budget, but our next committee of the whole is scheduled for Monday, March 15th, it says on here. And I'm believing that must be true. There is meetings, it seems like every day this week. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn, and I'm seeing Councillor Jansen and Mayor Martin. Is that what your intention was? We are done. Thank you all so much. Good night, everybody.